scene. So, yes, I don't use night mode. There's a whole new load of people awake to be mad about that. But here we are, jumping into BLG versus RNG. Kind of want to know where the LPL is at, so I've got the Games of Legends page open. By the way, gamesoflegends.com, highly recommended as your portal for analysis in terms of stats and things like that. Matchup we're looking at is RNG versus BLG. RNG milling around the middle, but I think a lot of people now understand that they open up the first part of the season without Uzi. That's how they approached their seasons, so a lot of these losses were pre-Uzi. They haven't been flawless with Uzi. If you look at their match history, and yes, they did beat Bilibili Gaming. They lost to Rogue Warriors 2-0, which was a big surprise, let's say. Losing to a very developmental squad. That's with Uzi playing. So then we had this 3-game series here today. Bilibili Gaming, it's a roster it's a team that hasn't been discussed very much overseas. In fact, a lot of people might know of the Hangzhou Spark in Overwatch League. Bilibili TV is a streaming platform. The Hangzhou Spark are Bilibili Gaming's Overwatch League spot, and they have those awesome posters that people really like. You know, they do great hype posters for both Bilibili and also for Hangzhou Spark. So this is their league team, and they've got some names that we know and love. We're gonna have a lot of LCK fans here because it's my stream. So look who's here: your boy Kuro, your boy ADD, or Ed, if you are pronouncing him as the Korean casters analyst would. They have the funniest name story in Meteor. He tried to be Meteor and misspelled himself. And then he tried to have it changed, and they said no. They said they would not change it because that was the registered name. So he has to be Meteor for the entire of Spring Split, which, you know, that hurts, being Meteor. We have Lehens, so it's pretty much the same kind of situation, but like Lehens just rolls off the tongue way better than Meteor. Is it someone who's very metrosexual, a Meteor? You want to almost say meta, but then you have the O sound. Like it's just caught in a lot of awkward spots. I think the English casters just call him. Yeah, it's someone mentioning Expression, of course, another classic. But at the end of the day, I think the English casters just call him Meteor because it was an honest mistake, and I can get behind that. So for the purpose of this review, I will say Meteor. He messed it up. I don't know if he's going to stick with the branding. I find it very embarrassing that he had to have like shirts printed with his name on it. Someone should tweet at me if they can find like Bilibili Gaming name printed jerseys. Do they print it Meteor or Meteor? Because at some point, maybe you sell enough merch and you're just Meteor. I don't know. But yeah. He's like kind of the rough diamond of this lineup, because the lineups are an interesting one. Jin Zhao has been around. He went to Worlds in 2016 with IMA, so an IMA, maybe that. Mini's not someone I'm familiar with. Meteor, I believe, I don't know if it was a sub-jungle, if it was on one of the lower rosters, but you know, he's definitely blossomed this year. On the lineup. And then it's ADD and Kuro, and like when you hear teams importing ADD and Kuro, you're like, well, the guy got blasted by Jensen, and the guy got relegated on MVP. They're your starters? Cool story. You know, that's kind of where you have to be. But I think Kuro ended so roughly that it undid a really strong summer season, especially the first half of summer. Before Rift Rivals, he was the best mid that we had in Korea. And ADD was always a player who meant a lot. Like, to me at least, like he was always really high on solo queue. He had games where he really performed, and then especially like you think about his summer, like he had the tearjerker story of getting having a collapsed lung, and then not being able to play while his team had to like off roll and lose because they couldn't register any more players, and then coming back to be relegated, not being able to find synergy again. Like there is nothing that brought me closer to tears than when the camera went back to MVP when they were relegated, and the look on the face of ADD, like being like, he had that look on his face where he was like, fuck, like, if only I didn't get sick, like, maybe we wouldn't have got relegated. When, like, it couldn't have been his fault, you know, man? Like, he just had the worst look on his face. Like, the moment that you're thinking about it that way, you know, like thinking about like things like acts of God and things like that. Like it was hard to watch, you know, like heart goes out to him. So happy that he, you know, found his way onto his feeding. You know, he's no longer around his MVP best friends, although good old Ian is playing mid lane for LGD these days. And I think ADD, he hasn't changed his champion pool. You get to look here and be like, oh, look, Urgot, Scion, Poppy. And his opponent today, Amazing J, is very similar. So we have a lot of these kind of tank role players apparently on our stream this week, which is intriguing to think about. Kuro, a bit more, I mean, it's pretty much playing Kuro champions. I guess the Akali is new. He's always played a lot of one-offs, and I feel like we see mostly one-offs that he can play. There's some champions that famously he couldn't play, like Azir at the start of his career and eventually became an Azir player, but wasn't always there. Jin Zhao, I think about his Sivir a lot, but this season's been Ezra Callisto, so trying to update where things go. His Jin was his other famous pick, but no one would dare play Jin this week. You'll notice quite a bit of 80 carry Nico happening in this league. Like right now, Kramer is like the runaway MVP of LPL if you're not including like the big names, right? Like Kramer has been just ultra hard carrying on LGD, and the reason why we're seeing it's 9.4, so actually it's full power Nico on this patch, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I believe it's full power Nico happening on this patch. So because of that, Nico is really godly strong at the moment. That's why we'll see quite a lot of Nico contested picks. So that was a Bilibili Gaming. Then RNG, you know, they're back with Uzi, so they're doing it Uzi style. Kars has been kind of a little bit down recently, but obviously still the guy you would go to as the best jungler in China. And Zhao Hu, you know, he had a big fall off in 2018 and the start of 2019, but he's recently, like the last 6 series he's played, been a monster. Like Zhao Hu has been like just killing people. He's been really, really impressive. Important note is that we showed the stats before. We'll show them again when it comes to champion priorities. But we still have stats like Zoe after 50 picks, 70% win rate. So super high over in China. So Zoe is like just kind of a free win button for the good teams in China. Something to remember. Really a bit low, but I mean, I think that's true for most regions. No other big picks here, but I wanted to really highlight Zoe because very, very rarely will you have a champion picked 50 times with a 70% win rate. That's actually insanely super high. Someone asked about Costa versus Ning. I think Costa's had some good... I think Ning had obviously a really hot start, but I think he's like, what is the baseline of a Ning performance when he's either a 10 or like a 1 out of 10? And how much is that about how Ning's feeling that day? I think the best of Ning is better than the best of Costa historically, and I think he won so many MVPs that, yes, in hindsight, it is so different, right? Like, Costa's a jungler's jungler, and Ning is the world champion jungler. It's kind of how I think about it. That's not to criticize Ning. Like, damn, is he good on his day, but it's almost like you tell me Ning and Costa do the same job, and you're right, but like, are you right? Like, are you wrong? Like, I don't know. They're very weird. Lucian win rate's pretty low, I guess, worth noting. And I guess with all the new champions coming out in face of it, maybe that's going to be a trend that continues. But let's just roll on, because this is a game that I did not watch, that I'm watching largely on hype. The hype around this series is very strong. So I'm very excited to watch it. So, Bilibili Gaming. Kuro absorbing most of the bans so far. I guess we should talk over how this series went before we get into the actual pick bans. So sorry to debate you one more time. Game number 1 of the series. I watched the VODs of game 1 and 2 before I came into this VOD review. So game number 1, they were able to get a pretty big lead around... get a pretty lead and snowball down. I want you to look at this comp and think about what it does well. The spoiler is that it dives bot lane well, so the GP priority actually came out 2 games in a row from Bilibili Gaming, because you can just ult bot lane, Rek'Sai can tunnel over bot lane, Nico and Morgana can try to find a way to do damage, and this was like a lot about shutting down Uzi, and while it worked to an extent, it wasn't necessarily a god tier thing or anything, but they played out this draft pretty well and won a Baron fight and won it, so in general, the draft is mainly constructed to shut down Uzi. And guess what? They tried it again. They're like, all right, let's do it again. Let's just shut down bot lane as hard as possible. They get Kalista as a priority pick. They have GP. Sejuani can dive bot lane. But this time, they were actually able to stick the landing. Amazing J, is important to note, was playing very poorly in this series in games 1 and 2. In both games, he kind of was just really all over the place. And that caused him a lot of problems. In game number 2, for example, he died top lane and teleported turret to die a second time, which you almost never see in pro play. So I think they've had a lot of issues specifically on around Amazing J in recent performances, and they don't have someone they're willing to run. Remember, Let Me is no longer on the roster, active roster these days. So yeah, we're expecting top lane to be a problem for Bilibili to mostly play around trying to shut down Uzi advantages. That's kind of where we're at in terms of expectations where the draft is going. So Nico is available and really high priority on this patch, but they actually end up going for the Zoe. So first pick for Kuro. Kuro's Zoe was actually very hit or miss in 2018. Like, I wouldn't think of him as a hard carry Zoe player. But Xiaohu is an ultra hard carry Zoe player, and so they're just... It's a denial pick. It's one that Kuro has been able to win on this season, but again, I'm biased by previous performance because I watched that a lot closer, and his Zoe play hasn't necessarily been next level. The cost is pretty significant here. Like, you lose Nico, Galio if you want to go for complete bot lane. I think you take Galio X because you're not worried about specifically the Vayne. So the fact that Vayne is banned, Vayne against Galio is seen as like an answer because you can just condemn away the taunt, as I said a couple of times today. So I don't mind the Galio, but interestingly, they have no priority on Nico. It's possible that Uzi just doesn't play it, and it's a champion that's kind of different to run in AD carry because it fills a damage dealer spot when it has a lot of damage shaved away on 9.5. So maybe he's just trying to skip over that part and hope that history doesn't leave it as a core tenet of the meta. So they just go Yasuo into... You would assume it's almost certainly Yasuo mid, given Amazing J's effective champion pool these days, into Zoe, which can be a fine matchup, but gets poked out more often than not. Kind of like a slightly worse version of Lissandra versus Zoe. And BLG just go power, so they're going for a super power early draft with the Rek'Sai here. Sort of champion that can punish Yasuo, whatever the assignment is. And it's quite bold to go Zac into Rek'Sai because it's scaling versus immediate impact. But that is the Karsa choice here, and it does mean they have a god Yasuo comp in the late game. When it comes to knockups, you don't need to think about those in terms of your second round picks. You can just go with whatever works. So RNG at this juncture, because Amazing J has just been sucking, you could understand just blind picking something he can play in the top side. Especially because ADD is not thought of someone who can hard counterpick you and just wait for AD carry to get a counterpick somewhere. Let's see what path RNG take. Again, I haven't seen this draft before. It's a fresh one. They could steal... Like, Amazing J has played GP, and if you steal GP here, it's an Uzi pick. But they don't do it. They just highlight it. Interesting. So they could have just stolen GP and then just GP ulted down bot lane a million times. Instead, they don't do that. So because of that, they will just take Lucian as kind of a power draft. And then look at this. BLG just goes for the classic MVP Scion. They're taking away Amazing J's champion. But now Amazing J can just play a tank into it. And I feel like that's least likely now to amplify his problems. Like, you could actually play Maokai here. Like, doesn't that sound insane? Like, you could. You could play Maokai here, and you'd probably be fine. Now, bot lane is Lucian Galio. I think it's fine against Nico Braum. Like, I guess it's not going to be hard priority, but it's going to be even. If you want to take a lane control, you can go a Klepto top laner. Like, a lot of teams would go Vlad here, but it's banned away. AP Cannon could be played here. It'd be fine. Yeah, I mean, it's not like BLG exposed Amazing J's champion pool in this game. The only thing it's Kennen who has to overextend for Klepto, and it's Rek'Sai Sion, a very reliable gank. So this puts a target on Amazing J's back. But if you're able to do that, then there's less of a target on Uzi's back. And given how this series played out, and given how every Uzi game always plays out, anything that gets a bit of pressure relieved from Mr. Uzi is fine. So I actually don't like how BLG approached the second round, but to some degree, they have like kind of the rich man's Amazing J and ADD. And sadly, Amazing J is the poor man's Amazing J, which, that's awkward. So, 9.5 on hit Nico. People are talking about whether it was OP or not on this patch. Actually, it's very 6 and 2 3s, as my father would say. 6 is also 3 plus 3. In that, on 9.5, you have the extra on-hit damage removed. So you lose 40 damage every second order with Rage Blade. And there was attack speed scaling changes that means that you have a lot less attack speed scaling, so you have to, your items, don't lead to the same attack speed breakpoints. So I think for on-hit Nico that, yes, you can't stun as many people as before, but from what I've watched from these LPL games, it's just pure on killing people, and if you hit the root, that's a bonus. So I actually think for purely DPS role, other people are going to carry CC. If you have like top lane carry, if you have a Fiora and stuff, then I think I agree because you need some CC in a lineup. But I think given the role that Nico has been occupying in 9.4 in China, I actually think that it's a much bigger nerf if you include the hotfix on 9.5. That's just my personal opinion. If you have a different opinion, completely valid. But that's been my read on what I've seen. So you look at RNG and you say, Zac Yasuo, God late game team fighting duo. They didn't go for Gragas, which is more reliable, but Zac provides more in the late game than Gragas. Gragas has his first round of spells and then nothing else. And it's a 2-threat comp from the enemy. So if you're just able to, from out of the screen, contest Kuro and Jinzhao, or even just one of them, that's a pretty big win. Kuro nicely spotting out the Raptor start here, so there should be a lot of Rek'Sai options in terms of path, and Rek'Sai just obliterates Krugs pretty fast, so we'll see if there's a pathing here. Now, a lot of junglers just would have gone topside scuttle and then gone back for bot side scuttle, because Karsa's going for the don't want to lose his Zac pathing, which is Raptors, red, Krugs, hitting level 3, and then saying, ooh, can I get a scuttle somewhere? And it's almost always topside scuttle in the most defensive way possible. Might still end up with that. Again, I haven't seen this game, so. Ooh, just watching up the laning phase be played. Nito are going for a very early gank. They're just in a really weird lane spot here, because Zac is not going to... Zac is dead weight for you if you're Uzi and Ming in the early game. As a champion, with this path on the red side, like this would have been information to RNG. They know he's going for ultra safe, I'm playing a competitive best of 3. It's the final game. I need to hit level 3 without being like completely obliterated. And maybe I'll have Kennen priority to get the respawn on these camps. You're likely to get the second respawn. You're getting very little from your jungle, which means the enemy jungler can do a lot of things. He rolls in, they get the information pretty late with the ward they had down, and to be fair, where do you ward against Rek'Sai is a fair question. If it's not in that brush, you might just get popped over the wall. Like, it's not the easiest thing to do, but like, this is pretty cookie cutter gank from Meteor, and it works. So Meteor gets the gank. He's going to get bot side scuttle. RNG might suspect that top side scuttle is up, but actually, if he goes for topside scuttle now, he loses 2 camps bot lane, as you can see. So, with one person dead, they're not 100% sure on the respawn timer, and the respawn time has been way shorter after that change, I guess, half a year ago. Watching this one, they get the reset here. In moments like this, where the reset happens and no one picks up a buff, the scaling champion versus the immediate impact champion is always something I want to talk about, because Meteor and Karsa get no gold here. And that actually hurts Rek'Sai more than it hurts Karsa, because Rek'Sai is about a champion that needs to hit her items at a certain timing and then actually have agency at that timing or get outscaled. Meanwhile, every other scenario works for Zac. So actually, even trades when no one gets anything is advantage RNG in the early game, but a small advantage, right, as we can see. Meteor taking over the map. He wants to play topside now, where possible, because he knows that's where the respawn camp's going to come a little bit later. But this is an invitation Karsa took. Karsa was a bit of a screw at Zac player, in and out of meta a few times. Played it at MSI last year. I think it just provides so much in teamfights, and they already win teamfights because Uzi, that that's probably why they're super incentivized to always go Zac, but I think a lot of teams would have been super scared to go Zac where they did. They couldn't get any jungle bans in. It's into Rek'Sai, who's the opposite of Zac in terms of early game. And it's just kind of on BLG to find advantages wherever they go and be pretty sure that RNG are unlikely to be able to get anything even. Like, this is 2 for 1 wherever possible. Where is kind of what's going on here from the side of BLG. We don't know for sure if it's AD or AP Cannon, but we are heavily thinking AP Cannon, because AP Cannon is a better team fighter, and RNG already have the teamfight team, and also AD Cannon doesn't split that well against Sion. I think if Sion just gets to stack AD here, or armor I should say, for AD damage, I think that's a really big headache. And also you're just going to deprioritize Amazing J because he's been way out of form. So probably just going to be AP Cannon crib together on the top side. Karsa's in a good spot for a counter gank here. Nice to see. They have no idea if Meteor has gone for camps or if he's staying bot side. It doesn't matter because they're able to pull off a gank. That's really nicely done by RNG. They don't even need to invest a summoner for that one. So just good pathing from Karsa. You know, we always talk about the top laner senses. Does Xiao just randomly die here? Oh, he just ints. Why did that happen? So this is just a 1 for 0, right? The play is over in your head. I was about to talk about other stuff as Xiao was like, I guess, did he spot on the ward earlier? Yeah, he was spotted backing on a ward. In my head, this play is over, right? And then they're just like, why don't we? What if we killed him? Karsa's already on the Gromp, because why would anyone die there? Damn, man, this is some Faker and Spring of last year problems going on from... This is so lazy from Xiao. So why is Xiao even there? So Xiao roams down, pinged out by Kuro, and then goes for a pretty lazy back timing. He knows Kuro's not coming, that part he could see. And then they just get collapsed on. This is really, really lazy from first Xiao, and then... Yeah. And just everything goes wrong. Like, Uzi's like, oh, sorry, mate, I'll try and help out, and he dies. That was really, really lazy. Ah, that's what happened. Oh, man. Karsa killed Uzi. I just saw that on the replay. I was like, wait, what happened with the Blast Cone here? Uzi got super unlucky with that. Like, it probably should have just been a 1 for 1, which I think is already way more than BLG deserved. But then it became a 2 for 1, which... That's a shenanigans moment. That's where Mr. Uzi and Calms has definitely got some harsh words to say. Yeah, we're going to get the replay one more time. He got Blast Cone there. Karsa giveth, Karsa taketh away. Now, the mistake here is 100% Xiaohu's, because, like, he's the one that solo recalls, and then everyone else has to walk into weird spots in order to try to make something happen. But then, of course, you get the mental side, which is, oh my god, what the hell is this going on with Uzi being offered as tribute. And now Jin Zhao randomly, as a champion they didn't ban, has 3 kills, which is a pretty big problem. Watching the replay. So Xiao right now has no vision of anything. No information. Control ward right side. Kuro on the left side. I mean, This is just lazy. Again, like he just rolls into mid lane and dies. Like he doesn't have any coverage. And like, you can respect too much and live and have it be the wrong decision because you just don't get enough farm, but at this map state, Zach can't change a map state if his side lanes are not doing anything. And you're going to need to teleport in from Amazing J or bot lane to get priority. Otherwise, Zach just kind of farms and says, guys, eventually I'm level 9 and I'll be able to do things. But pre-level 9, where you have just unbelievable range and it doesn't really matter where wards are at, BLG have complete run of the river. You know, Yasuo has just died twice in like the blink of an eye. Sion is, you know, getting closer and closer to unkillable territory. And it gets interesting in fights because Jin Zhao's self-peel works pretty damn well against Yasuo Zac. Like if you cleanse ult as Nico, you do something more. It feels like Xayah-esque, right? It's like a super Xayah in this case. Watching how this play starts here. So is the blast plant back up? No, he has to walk down there. I'm using the blast plant not back up. This is really well played by Karsa. It's on a control ward. He gets in the back line. Karsa's Zac is so clean, right? It always was. And just kidnaps Jinja. Awesome play from Karsa. The one lane he could actually make something happen around. I think Silent's already unkillable. So that's actually super nice pathing by Karsa once again. Like, he's doing his best. Again, he put his team in this spot because he went Zac, right? And then that's not going to provide you a lot in the early to mid game. But if you're pulling off those ganks, at least you're keeping things competitive. They're actually ahead in gold in a game where I feel like BLG should win very hard at 1-2 item and then fall away. Karsa comes in. He hits everything. Really nice synergy with Ming. This is just a beautiful play coming through from RNG, and they get a shutdown onto Jin Zhao. I believe that goes to Karsa. Not ideal. Really wanted to leave it on to Uzi, the 600 gold shutdown, but now Karsa's got the camp going, and at least something different's changing. Really nice camp here. They know Jin Zhao's flash is down. Cleanse not going to mean that much. Zac and Galio, best friend dive members forever. They pick up the kill there, and it's just a back timing that BLG weren't respecting, so I think that's well played. Do notice that Sion's been able to get almost 2 turret plates in the matchup. Whoa, that's some Silent Speedway right there. That's an epic play, actually. But they're going to get the turret here for sure. It's only an answering turret. Maybe about even speed, I guess. Who's going to get the first turret here? I have no idea, by the way. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But the difference is that the AD carry gets no turret plates. Meanwhile, Lucian gets at least share of most of the turret plates, which is something pretty relevant. It's able to baby the gold lead, because it was a pretty big gold lead. Remember, it's 3-0-0 CS for CS on Jin Zhao. Now Jin Zhao's died twice in recent memory. And the CS gap is 12 CS now, so able to get something here. Still around the top side, so Amazing J. The evolution of the pathing in this series is important. If you're watching it live, Karsa tried to defensively path around Amazing J in game number 1. It didn't work, and Amazing J got slammed. Then he kind of gave up top side and played much more bot side, and things went way better. So he's not pathing around the cannon at all. But the worry is, of course, that Amazing J won't be able to turn turret plates and other things into an advantage because he's had a real struggle of some recent weeks. So the map state here is really controlled by RNG bot side, and BLG are like in between vision missions. That's why they come back with 3 control wards they can place down. Ocean Drake spawning frees you up to kind of focus on other things. You don't really care about the Ocean Drake that much, apart from the fact that you'd have 3 Drakes pretty early as BLG, and that's a future back because the Drake was only picked up really very recently. Just watching how these teams approach the map state. This is just Karsa assuming that he's waiting in this brush. And it makes sense. Right? This is actually not like a super next level, but it's smart. It's Karsa saying, I don't want to go all the way into that brush because I don't know how many people are there, but I think Rek'Sai's waiting for the scuttle to be started. Amazing J just kind of ults in a rage fashion. Doesn't do anything, but gets the flash out of Meteor, so it's something. This is on a ward, right? This is on a ward, so Kuro and Meteor should have seen this coming, and they seem to be surprised that the knock-up is actually earlier than expected. It's as AD was coming down, I guess that was what they were trying to bait for, but they have to use a lot at the start of this play. But you get to fight front to back. They're going to kill the Zac here. Interesting this was a next level. It seems like they trust in Sion being able to get there, but Sion hadn't started before the knock-up chain. It's certainly not before Zac went in. But then you have your threats in order, and Lucian is not. So Lucian starts this play fighting top side. So like when Zac dives in, Lucian's actually pushing a wave. So Lucian doesn't even leave lane till after this point. So interestingly, it does end up being a pretty significant disconnect because Amazing J teleports in without ultimate. Like this is an RNG trying to have the same amount of members present, but doing it at a really weird timing. So even though the Karsa engage looked so good and it was suspicious that BLG took it in, it actually all came through in a big way for BLG because the pieces around it were not ready for RNG. Their clothes were still on the wash for this dress rehearsal, and they get taken down. So sort of fight where, you know, you pause at this point, and this just never happens in Korea, right? Because the top laner says, I can't be there. Kennen is on a back, and you know his ult's not down. But because it's the LPL, and they scrap more, it's, I'm going to get a two-man knock up here, and Yasuo is going to do the rest of the work. I can TP, says Kennen. Just a very different kind of league. And I appreciate the fact that it's more bold, but your thought is always that if you get that sort of tempo injection as BLG, and you're a good team, you should be able to close the game from here. Like, it sounds like too much. Like, they don't have a big goal lead or anything, but it is the sort of throw. I mean, it's like almost a bigger throw than at least 2 out of 3 of Team Liquid's throws that we identified in our first VOD review of the night. So there's just a lot of things could have been different in terms of communication that don't happen. And this is also RNG, who love to park Uzi top lane. Like, Uzi doesn't actually play in the mid lane as much as you might imagine. He likes to chase around the farm and get the turret damage in and things like that. So you understand how and why it happened because RNG, but now BLG are back in a scenario where they have some control. Previously, they were just waiting for each Zac ultimate to kill them, or Zac classic slingshot to kill them. Chase down, take down Amazing J. He's on the weak side with no vision. I don't... Like, he comes from base. He's got a control ward as it starts. He's like, okay, this could be fine. And he's actually setting up for an aggressive play, as you can see. Puts down a ward. And to some degree, he's a little bit hard done by, because he wanted to just disengage out. The moment where, if you look like when his control ward, he has a control ward, but doesn't spot anything behind him. So it's a bit ships in the night here for Amazing J. Like, on the one hand, what are you going to find on this side of the map when everyone else on your team is elsewhere? But on the other hand, like, the ships in the night really pushed him into a really horrible position, and so he just goes down. So it feels worse than it is. Like, the fact that he's had a really bad series now, he's 0-3-0, you're just like another Amazing J idiot play. But I think his first instinct was questionable but not faulty, and then by the end he was just dead, right? So he just goes down. They lose Scuttle. They lose Ocean from there. Man, if BLG got some higher roll Drakes, if they could have got some Infernals or Mountains, apart from just the single, that might have been a big difference in this game. But it didn't happen. Not to be. How we doing, chat? We're doing alright? We're feeling alright out there? Enjoying some VOD reviews. Remember, we do have the LEC Match of the Century coming after this one, so I know a lot of people looking forward to that. We're just working our way through what is pretty kind of slow and steady early to mid game here. I know I've been reliably informed this one kicks into high gear, so I'm looking forward to how exciting it can all become. Games are just different. Like, even though we've had some lull states in this game, there's been 13 kills in 20 minutes. There could have been way more. And it's the fun thing about doing the region hopping is that you get just different styles of game where the kite back in Korea is the kite forward in China. That's just the way it's been for a long time. Like, they'll take engagements that other people won't. That makes things interesting. I think BLG done a really good job of controlling top side around the Baron here. That's way more control than a lot of Zac drafts actually give up when it comes to forward control wards and ways to play around Baron. And they control probably 60% of the map pretty reliably in this game. So they see a recall on a ward and they decide it's time to go on Nico. Now Braum is in this bush. Galio's out of ult range. Yasuo is out of anything range. They take it anyway. So I imagine this is a I'm not going to die, I'm Aftershock Flash Zac. And we can TP gank with Amazing J. But they're never going to have Yasuo in this fight till way late. Doesn't matter. With Jin Zhao dead, it's so hard to actually out-damage in this fight, so you would expect RNG would take the lead. Let's watch the replay. It's all about recall timings here. Mini's right there. That's why a lot of people don't make that play. Doesn't go over the wall, so actually Sion can't actually easily drift into the fight. And Yasuo, to his credit, actually ends up getting there on time because it was so one-note at the start. No damage coming out of the Nico, and really bad terrain because Jin Zhao can't actually use his front line to fight around. He has to fight in a really weird spot. So you get nothing there. Alright. What are we doing here? I missed why we're in this. So fighting for red side control. ADD can face check. He's Sion, so Griffin looks at this with a single tier. And they just take a pick and back away. So ADD pushes up alone. He has no backup. He dies. That's what should happen as RNG. RNG's comp is deceptively really strong at defending red. That's why I was surprised earlier that control ward advantage in that area was on BLG's. So here's the engage again. I'm watching how this fails from Kennen. I still can't work out why that happens. I'm going to try and watch it slower. Why does Kennen not get in there? So Amazing J comes in. I'm trying to watch this one to understand it myself. So Amazing J comes in, and this is where you're like, alright, I'm going to kill everyone. Ah, Braum ultimate. Braum ultimate interrupts, so that's so big. Because yes, Meteor will die, but think about how much more would have happened if Uzi full health bar could have got in there. Okay. Seems chat called it before I did. I was trying to work it out. It looked like a poppy bounce back. I was like, what the hell happened there? Every elastic slingshot is just a re-engage into a player from Karsa. He's trying to turn everything into gold on his side. See Spawn still calling out Amazing J. Like, Amazing J could have looked for a safer fat area of the water flash. It was very unlikely that that order of events would happen, but damn, if it didn't, then it would have been a bigger lead to the side of BLG, sorry, RNG for sure. And now RNG have outtraded them a couple of times, and these weird spots, and we saw TL get caught out in spots like this. Every team does. Like, after a reset, how do you get deep vision? Is it as easy as the last time? And every level, that an item that goes into RNG, the answer should be increasingly, it doesn't matter if you're Scion or not. You're not tanky enough for this. No one else is even towards the mouth of the Baron Pit, let alone anything else. So they get the Blast Plant, they take him out. It's just pretty lazy for AD to go in for a ward like that. And then it's, can I clear this ward? And the answer is no, because no one is in. The dominoes here, everything's so out of position on the side of BLG. This feels like a mixed language roster problem, right? Where usually you communicate everything out in a nice succinct way, and there's always someone to, actually, I should back you up. But they're kind of contriving to lose the maximum here, are BLG, on the last couple of vision contests, and now RNG own the Baron Pit. Baron speed for RNG is good. It's not outstanding, but it's good. And obviously Cannon's going to be most likely coming from a bot side flank. Turn from RNG is excellent. Alright, this is, yeah. Moments like this is what the Fiesta emote was made for. The extra chase there. Jin Zhao's like flashing and so deep in the enemy territory, but it's a good run back after all. Amazing J spotted again. BLG been smart about where Kennen is likely to be. Should be a free Baron though. Kuro. It is insane that Kuro doesn't die here. Holy crap. So they lose the Baron. I think a lot of teams full reset here, right? Let's go to like normal speed. So Baron's gone, right? And they're like, well, we lost Baron, but BLG played really smart around Blue Trinket. We should, I guess, see. Whose Blue Trinket was it, do you reckon? It was almost certainly... Okay, it was actually Kuro's own Blue Trinket. So this is like one of those Kuro moments. Kuro has big moments like this, right? So Kuro's Blue Trinket is up here. We checked before, and it was the Blue Trinket coming through from Jin Zhao onto the Baron Pit right at the start of this play. And then Kuro anticipates Amazing J is in that flank spot. Again, it's not rocket science. They now know it's not the River Brush, so that's the area you try to approach as a cannon, but he spots him himself. He knows that there's no chance of getting Baron, so he tries to contest. You know, he's around, seeing what can happen. One shots Amazing J. Already, that's a bold play. As a 3v5, he contests behind the pit, gets the catch after his own scrying plan to spot, as he assumed that's where Cannon will be. Already, you're like, all right, Kuro, nicely done. He uses his real flash to try to buy time as Uzi comes in. Continues to get poke in, trying to play out this. We're just watching Kuro for this play. Uzi, because his teammate died, is in a really weird spot around here. But ADD's alive. Remember, this is Meteor and Mini running from base on Rek'Sai Braum, like after the Baron had already died. And then Kuro snipes out first Uzi, and then the Blast Plant. Who hits this Blast Plant? Who hits the Blast Plant? I need to know. Let's see who hits the Blast Plant, chat. We need to know. This is so slow, by the way. Look how slow these animations are. I need to know. Is it Kuro? Is it not? It's definitely not Elastic Slingshot Boy over here. Oh, it's so slow. Alright, Q animation in the air. We're getting the ultra confirmation here. I don't think it's Karsa. That's Kuro. Kuro presses it. All right. Kuro also turns that around and gets this skill. This is a god tier play. This is penta worthy from Kuro. What an awesome play. And then Raz with the awesome call. This should be on the penta. It can't be Galio. Galio's queuing. So it had to be him interrupting that. This is the penta, and Raz has the great call as well. Where have you been all my life? This is Kuro from before Rift Rivals, man. That was some badass plays right there. And he did it all himself. The thing you have to remember is, think about this game state where it all happens. You know, like, we're here. Oh, we're not showing it, but we're at 3v5. He gets in there, gets all of the kills. He removes Baron on multiple important members and gets out. That's an amazing play from Kuro. He's popping off. Nice to see he can do it. A lot of people might not know this, but the approach that a lot of Korean teams took when they were rebuilding their rosters were old players aren't worth it. Young players are going to be there for longer. Build your team around young players. So players like Kuro, you know, I don't know the specifics of why he wasn't on Afrika, but he was out pretty early. They announced it, right? Was he pushed? Was it his decision? Was it more of one or the other? All I can tell you is that Korean orgs wanted young players and old players like Prey and Gorilla, Kuro. We're naming a lot of Rocks Tigers now, so the Pepe Hands will come out. They were not what teams wanted to spend money on. So I think Kuro actually had very few options if he wanted to stay in Korea. So I think he just ended up going to China. That wasn't greed on his part. I think it was just a reprioritization that happened with teams. So that's the sort of thing where, you know, you looked at Afrika for the first round robin and you're like, man, you guys could have used Kuro's intelligence and smarts. So it's just, I like to see Korean teams have to eat humble pie a bit, where like teams like KT, Afrika, and Gen G have sucked, you know, for the majority of spring, and some of these players have gone overseas and done well. Like, I'm happy to see that Kuro is still performing at a really good level. Had a little buffer there, but shouldn't be a big issue. We can increase the speed again. Game state here is Yasuo may be feeding, but has 2 damage items. And they have a burst comp. This is one of those comps where you look at the enemy like, but what happens if he dies to Zoe or Nico? And I think you've got the win wall, you have very strong tank with burst, and it's not going to be so much about skating around finishing off members of Xiaohu, it's going to be about burst, so I don't mind the build at all. Uzi's huge, it's got Infinity Edge. 3rd item here, so burst build, Zeal item delayed. Meanwhile, Nico is relatively quite far behind. So what does he know? Like, Xiaohu walks up, clears a ward, and just kind of dies. This is just... Did he really need to be melee auto-attacking a turret? The answer is no, and this is a very poor decision by Xiaohu. Yes, I understand you're threatening for something, but I just... What was the best case scenario? You get 3-4 autos off? Like... It's kind of peculiar why you would make that play. And now BLG can play front to back because Yasuo is gone. There's no threat there. They get aced because Xiaohu decided he needed to hit turret. Like, this is bad. That's one of those peculiar ones where you're like, come on, Xiaohu. Like, you've been in good form recently. He had no need to step up there to auto-attack the turret. Like, this turret is full health. Your next minion wave is pretty far away and you've got... You know, a embattled minion wave, but like, you know, it's not full strength or anything. And you don't know where Sion is. You assume he's going to lane ult you. You don't know where Braum or Rek'Sai are. You hope one of them's out of position. But Rek'Sai just kind of tunnels through the moment he's in vision, and Yasuo dies instantly because he... Here's where, like, a second ago, I'm like, I like the build, right? I like the build from Yasuo. It's a burst build. You're a burst team. And I don't disagree. That's not and then he dies and you're like, okay, PapaSmithy, what if he had Sterix there? Maybe he lives long enough for everyone to come back up, and like, maybe you're right, but You got to play to your items. If you're going to build Infinity Edge Shiv, you don't greed for an auto attack on a full health inner turret that doesn't change the game at all. Like, don't do that. That's terrible. But that's what he did. He didn't play to his items. He played away from his items. In fact, he played to the weaknesses of his items. And so then everybody died. There's going to be like shutdowns and stuff from this. How much bounties do we have? No bounties. Important to note. But, yeah, really lazy from Yasuo. It's a really poor play. You shouldn't see this at the highest level. And now, look at the Zoe is insanely huge. 3 items and sitting on probably quite a lot of gold. Jin Zhao now has his team fight items. Remember, he had Zeal, Rage Blade, Bladerin before. So we're getting to the point where if the burst doesn't work, like if you cleanse Flash out of a lot of stuff and then suddenly Sion, Rek'Sai, and Braum are in the front, Zoe and Jin Zhao on this Nico will just kill you. So, Yeah, RNG are not playing around Yasuo in a side lane, so it doesn't matter that Kuro is on Zoe, so the side lane outscale hasn't happened. ADD's tanky enough that he's not going to die fast. The side lanes haven't been happy hunting grounds for RNG at any point in this series, so awkwardly, that means that all RNG can do is team fight. And yes, they have Zac, and yes, Uzi's strong, but it really depends on how these fights are starting. Like if we see a fight where BLG kite back and can re-engage, I think they win. If Amazing J actually can control space with a big flank, it's very clear how RNG win. But right now, the synergy with Amazing J just hasn't been there in this game. And now it's, you know, the one Zoe Trouble Bubble analysis is a valid one from the color cost here. He went back and bought a full Zonias. They're really powerful. Magic resist on the enemy team is almost 0, so you're feeling like Zoe's going to be the reason that BLG upset RNG and forced them a 2-match losing streak. Now, Amazing J, smart there, but remember, harder to flank a Rek'Sai. The moment that you get your wits around you and like, wait, what about Kennen? You're able to make the play like this. But if you start Baron, people have to walk through a pretty narrow choke, and thus, Amazing J flanking you is pretty reliable. So they go through the safety way. They never get into Baron range, so really good Baron take here. An underappreciated Baron take. It looks like it's under their noses, but here's the thought process from the side of BLG. They're like, all right, they could be leashing Baron. We're 100% sure, given Tremor Sense, that Amazing J is in the tri-brush above us on the left. You know, this brush that we see, brush where we saw Faker blown up by Evelyn in our VOD review last week. So let's just take away the blue, because otherwise we're going to lose blue for free, and then we'll try to contest Baron around the side. We have to go the safety way. Let's go around the side. But RNG also anticipate all of this. Know they'll still get a flank if BLG go this way, and actually just take the Baron. This is a really good Baron. If you notice, Smite is never in range of the pit. Meteor doesn't have flash, so he can't flash into the pit. He doesn't have tunnel, I believe, at that moment, so by the time Meteor gets in, Baron is already gone. Now, what that means for the fight, I don't know. I haven't seen the fight before. And BLG just dominate the fight in spite of that. Could RNG have made a different decision? They get Baron. Can they disengage? The answer is no, not really. They're in a really weird spot here. So, I really like the Baron take by RNG. But I think BLG actually force a fight straight afterwards that does punish them pretty well. Only the Galio lives there. And now it's like the world's most fed Zoe ever. 9-1 and 9. It's nice when you like what both teams do, and it gets you things on one side and not things on other ones. That was actually a really interesting trade, all things considered. I think I stand by a really good Baron because it amplified Amazing J's setup there, but then the escape wasn't possible. And now Ming is just a lonely Galio trying to interrupt. But they can't finish. We had a lot of moments like this, guys, in recent weeks, right? We had a lot of moments like this where you tried to buy time. Can you finish the Baron? at this point, doesn't everyone in the world say yes? Like, look at the time I've paused it at. We're at respawn timers of 19 seconds, 16 seconds, 26 seconds, 26 seconds, and only Ming alive. Like, just like when our observers went into full, into full zoom in mode on our Griffin Griffin SKT series, like, I see those death timers, I'm already talking about how RNG's on a losing streak, right? But watch how Ming plays this. First of all, tries to clear some more minions, as you do, flashes in taunts, and suddenly 11 seconds have run by from before. He's also proxying the minions here. It's actually relevant at this point that he's like stopping the minions from walking up as well. Like, it looks like a small thing, but the boy is doing literally everything he can to delay this. So what goes from 26 seconds with the inhibitor dying. Flash taunt is epic. That's just what flash taunt is. Justice punch. Just trying to stop the minions from getting into turret range. To work on aggro and stuff. Like, Ming does everything he can to buy time there. And that's the only reason this doesn't end. But it's very interesting because at the end of the day, like, I go back to this once more. I've been trained that you win games with death timers like that. Because no damage is spawning for 15 seconds and the inhibitor is dead. And then you have Nico, you have all the extra AP ratio that Zoe does to turrets relative to mages years ago. Like, I look at this and I'm like, the game's over. But we now have supports that do different things. Like, AoE taunt is such a big thing. And it's, to me, like, it's really well played by Ming, don't get me wrong, but it just shows you that, like, the tech is different. It almost feels like I'm a professional at horse carriage, like horse combat, and then, like, tanks came out. And it's like, well, that's cool, but, like, now we got tanks. Like, the weaponry is a bit different, is what I'm learning from all of this. For sure, that's my biggest takeaway here. Ming ults and then just kind of dies. I was wondering why he didn't taunt Flash earlier, and it's because he just didn't have a reason to. And now, there's no gold difference between the two teams. And RNG's comp, team fighting wise, is more forgiving because they have a lot of synergy with AoE Wombo. And BLG needs to always kite back. BLG is walk up, bait out either a Zac E or a Zac's health bar or Galio taunt flash or cannon, and then they kind of have to wait out 2 AoEs and then fight, and then they should win. Kind of like when we had the double Rageblade comp coming through from Nico Vayne from Genji. It's kind of similar here. It's like a huge burst advantage for RNG. Let's watch this one slow. So what happens as this starts is the Karsa just kidnaps to get out of the fight, right? Mostly in this case. He's trying to immune through, and he gets Meteor as a bonus. So Meteor dies, but watch the formations we're in and think about threat. At this point, you're like, okay, Meteor's down, but Jinjiao Kuro in the back line, Mini in the front line, ADD in the front line. It's what PapaSmithy said. Rageblade stacked up, we can win the fight. But you need to bait out certain ultimates. They baited out Karsa. They know that Ming doesn't have Flash, but Taunt, obviously, if they're going to go to the enemy, is going to be relevant. Watch how the rest of it plays out. First, the wind wall is in a really good spot. Watch the wind wall position here. I think the wind wall is in a good spot. There's so many effects happening here, but the main thing I want you to take away here is that we talked about how amazing Jay had Flash, and yes, he hadn't done anything all game, but that's not something they played around. And Amazing J instantly means that Kuro does no damage here. All of the gold on Kuro is gone. Like, Amazing J, having kind of crappy game, is just zoned out instantly in the back line. And then you look in the foreground on Uzi, he's able to first put damage into 1, then 2. He's doing no damage right now, like, don't get me wrong. But there's just no ability to play around what BLG can provide. Jin Zhao's full health the entire time, but doesn't get the target acquisition he wants, and Amazing J is the difference here. That's the backline threat. They weren't able to find the entirety of the rest of the game. And Nico really wants someone to jump on her, to disengage that spell with a shield, and then start auto-attacking, but Meteor's dead. ADD has to kite upwards. Big win for the side of RNG for sure. Yeah, Spawn talking about Carson, Amazing J. Amazing J finally got a fight off that he desperately needed to, but also Carson's like in a spot where he's contesting Jin Zhao and nothing can happen behind him. So now RNG should get everything except the game ender, you would imagine. Who knows what death timers are anymore, man. Kuro got away, by the way. He's 9-1-11 this game. He's got the secret number you call when you can't carry your team hard enough. In solo queue tribe, it's called 9111. And who knows, man. Maybe you'll get the assistance you need. The kidnap there, immuning through the stun was important. But then Karsa still, look at that knock-up onto Mini and ADD. Like, it means the front line isn't actually performing as it needs to do. It's really nicely done by Karsa in this fight. And it's a game where he brought it on to himself, so you know, people have been talking about how hard a carry this was from Karsa, and like for sure he made a lot of good plays, but he also went for this first round Zac that was, it would have been such a different game if he was in a different spot. The Q there was massive though. Like he plays for Teamfight Zac so impressively, for sure. And now we're just one turn away from the game ending, because that's just how it is at this game state. We have inhibitors down on both sides. No discernible advantage for either team. 2,000 gold lead for RNG, but it doesn't matter because we're close to item caps on most. RNG's comp is easy to execute. Next time they'll have Torn Up on Ming, you would imagine. Zac can never be repelled, as we know. And you've got one of those scenarios where, you know, Sion, Rek'Sai, Braum. What do they actually do in these fights? They need to control space. That's what a tank does. Because normally you want to kill the squishy guys that do damage and ignore the tanks. But the reason why front-to-back team fighting exists is usually that's pretty hard to ignore. And not a lot of champions can contest backlines. Zac can contest backlines. Galio can join someone to contest backlines. And Cannon's going to just blow up a backline. So the ability for Sion, Rek'Sai, and Braum to control space after, say, Sion ult, Sion Q, and Braum ult is down is almost zero. So all the items loaded in there are unlikely to do their function. Meanwhile, yes, it's unlikely Uzi will be able to push damage past the front line, but it's likely Amazing J and Xiaohu will. So it's much trickier to pull off the BLG comp here in this particular spot. It's mostly become about fights. You know, we're late enough in the game that RNG just making it about Baron and trying to get BLG to come in through a narrow choke to contest it. They bait out a lot here. This is the sort of fight that is like what I was talking about, right? With BLG being able to re-engage after ults are down. RNG just running at a Baron again. We don't do side lanes in the LPL, so... RNG just making it all about Baron. They don't want BLG to have access to their mid lane inhibitor to make it equal inhibitors, so they're just trying to pull them as early as possible. Do they also know about ward exhaustion? Do we have an overlay here about control wards in inventory? There's only control wards on Galio on the side of RNG. There is one on Braum and Sion as the play starts. Oh, spoilers. Yeah, we got to this point. Alright, so back on the Baron again. Wait, Meteor smited the minion in mid. I guess it's only a 15-second cooldown. I guess it doesn't matter, but that's bold, let's say. And RNG, their first instinct is correct. Why do they start Baron here? Earlier. RNG are trying to make BLG fight around where Kuro is. Kind of the prime situation for a equalizer in previous metas. The narrow crevice around there, you're for sure going to get value out of Amazing J, Xiaohu, and Karso many more times than you don't. We saw the one time where Amazing J kind of like flashed into a Braum ultimate. More often than not, that's going to be the Bazinga spot to get the fight you want. And so that's why they start Baron again. They say, you can't go and take our inhibitor. Our turn is Zac. They're pretty sure that there's no vision on the Zac, and they're correct. Kuro and Jinzhao are together as threats, and then watch this play. Like, they just blow everyone up in the front line. There's nothing you can do there. It's so hard to be a front line when you're working in weird terrain like that, and we already talked about how there was going to be some struggles for ADD. So I assume this is going to be the game. There were other ways RNG could have played out this game. Like, they win the game. There's 46 kills in the game, right? So already it's a pretty big counterpoint to the two series we saw so far today. But if you draft as deeply in team fighting as they do, you can skip over steps and just tank Baron. Just like when we were talking about who can tank Baron and can't, Zac can tank Baron infinitely. And that's why they can just make the game about a Baron fight, knowing that their comp has AoE wombo that beats the enemy whichever way they come from. Like, really the only ward you need is like, are they coming from the blue buff, or are they coming down the more narrow entrance to the right of the blue buff entrance when you're coming from blue to Baron. So because of that, you can skip some steps, and it is often what we see in the LPL. They're much more about fighting. I don't think this was a mindless fighting game. There wasn't too many like, what objectives are we fighting for? It was just RNG saying Baron, 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 knowing that they were either going to get the Baron or they're going to be able to turn off Baron. But yeah, I mean, they got to play themselves out of quite a lot of rust. Like, Xiaohu played this game really poorly. I thought all of RNG's setups around turrets were pretty bad, but then they just made it about Baron and took the Baron. So at least they were able to make it about a team fight, but I don't really leave this with a kind of hugely elevated opinion of RNG. Like, this just became about team fighting for team fighting's sakes, and I think the Zac draft pigeonholed that into a little bit. Karsa played really well in this game. I know he was like out of form a bit in recent series, but especially towards the end, he made some really nice engages, but that's just what Zac does. So I come away less impressed with RNG than I thought I would have in this particular series. I think BLG is a team that I've had fun checking in on because I just assumed they would be bad because it didn't feel like Kuro or ADD as your solo lanes in 2019 would be smart, but they got quite a lot of nice things to look at. I don't think they were on full display in this particular game. But as a part of a 3-game series, Amazing J kind of got to do an Amedios impersonation, and you kind of want to add all 3 game times together because he did almost nothing meaningful in the first 2 games and then got it done finally in that last fight. So yeah, I just wanted a chance to check in with RNG and BLG because this game got a lot of hype. For me, it didn't deliver as much as I thought it might, just because there were just the winning team kind of just ran it down Baron until they won, which is a way to win, but like doesn't show me the next levels. And Xiaohu sadly wasn't able to parlay his great form from recent series to this one, but still pretty hype. Still wanted to show an LPL series in our World Tour, and that means we've only got one destination, kind of like all the pro teams around the world. The only destination they're thinking about is Europe, Worlds in Europe. In this case, going to be the match of the century. So, going to take a short break, get a snack or two. We'll go over any subscriptions or donations that we got during that series, if there were any, and take a couple of questions, and then final game of the night, baby. So, join me for LEC very shortly.